Well, hello and welcome back, or should I say hello? Glad to have you here. Today, we're talking about punctuation. I'll be joined with my friends Nut and Bean. That is Bean the Border Collie on the chair. Okay, there seem to be a lot of rules about punctuation. But here's an uncomfortable truth. Punctuation is manufactured. It was made up in the 18th century as a way for printers to distinguish between certain lines and certain subjects and certain ideas. And the process of punctuation has evolved into several different ways of seeing how punctuation works. So I'm giving you a system, a consistent system that works throughout most subject matters and across most written elements so that you will be ready to use punctuation correctly for all the materials you need to write. Here's the key to punctuation. Punctuation helps you make sense. And as long as you're consistent and have a system, you're going to be all right. To be successful with strong punctuation, as well as with any sentences, you need to have strong subjects and strong verbs. The stronger the noun at the beginning of the sentence and the stronger the verb, the more likely you are to have a clear sentence and an easy use of punctuation. And then there are two key points. First, you have to learn what an independent phrase is and what a dependent clause is. Not a Santa Claus, that's different, a dependent clause. An independent phrase is a complete sentence. It's that easy. There's a subject and there's a verb. If there's a subject and a verb somewhere in a unit of language, then you have an independent phrase. In this case, we have the aardvark runs to the hill. The aardvark is the subject, runs is the verb. We have an independent sentence. Cha-ching! Step one done. Now a dependent clause, on the other hand, is different. A dependent clause means that there's no verb or no subject. The aardvark. Not a complete sentence. Of course the aardvark. Still not a complete sentence. Runs against the window. Not a complete sentence. All of those are fragments, or what we call dependent clauses. They're dependent on some other element to be complete. So, once we recognize that punctuation is mathematical, that there is a system underlying when we use periods, when we use commas, and that is dependent on the XY axis of independent clauses and dependent phrases, we're ready to rock and roll. So let's see. See, it might feel uncomfortable a little bit at first. That's Nut, the Catahoula in the back. Bean decided to sit on top of her. The guiding principle for all punctuation is that the period is the one ring that rules them all. It is the little hobbit that has control over the entire kingdom. Always use a period first and work out from the period. And a period separates independence. The aardvark runs to Juan. There's a subject, the aardvark, there's a verb, and a period. Everything in that phrase is a sentence. Juan cries, subject, verb. The period, right here, separates two independents. Independent, independent. Julia loves beetles. The sky is stink bug colored. That should be yellow. The earth revolves around the sun. We eat beetles. You see that a period separates each of these. Sentence, sentence. Always use a period first. But how do I know if I can use anything else? A semicolon, a colon, or any other piece of punctuation? Strangely enough, there's a nice list of punctuation marks that can substitute for the period. Mathematically, they have exactly the same formula. They mean the same, even though their meaning is different. A semicolon means differently than a colon, means differently than a comma and, or a comma but, or a comma so, but has the same mathematical value as a period. Here's that same sentence. Julia loves beetles. Semicolon. The sky is stink bug colored. Notice that this is an independent phrase. This is an independent phrase. I can put a semicolon there. What else could I put there? That's right, a period. Then why would I use a semicolon instead of a period? Punctuation marks are a lot like street signs. They have different values. The period is the stop. You have to bring your auto to a complete stop, look left, look right, and then go forward with your idea. A semicolon is more of a merge. So you come up to it and you say, yeah, the traffic looks pretty safe. I guess I can go forward. These two independent phrases are linked by the semicolon in that their meaning is very much the same, or linked to each other in their importance or relationship to each other. Well, what about a comma and? Conjunction function, what's your... Oh, I got the song wrong. Conjunction junction, what's your function? Julia loves beetles and the sky is stink bug colored. You can see how a semicolon and a comma and mean differently. We'll throw a but in there. Julia loves beetles, but the sky is stink bug. So even though they have the same mathematical quality, they're equal to a period, they mean differently, as does a colon, as does a question mark. Oh, let me read the sentence. Julia loves beetles? The sky is stink bug colored. Now what if I put an exclamation point here? Julia loves beetles? The sky is stink bug colored. Punctuation matters, but for our purposes as we create a system, what's most important for you to know is that each of these elements is the same as a period. What we cannot do is put a comma between two independents. No, says the red mark. That is commonly known as a comma splice. Here I have an independent phrase. Here I have an independent phrase. What could I put there? Oh, I could put a period. I could put a semicolon. I could put a comma but. I could put a question mark. I could put a colon. The one piece of punctuation I cannot put is a comma. You cannot yoke two independents together with a comma. Then what's the point of a comma? Commas are used to make certain we have distinguished between introductory phrases. They separate lists and they allow for us to generate modifiers. Julia loves, there's our subject and verb. What does she love? Beetles, the sky, and whispering. The comma says this is loved, and this is loved. As if the verb is an X and there are parentheses that allow the loves to be distributed across the three things that she loves. Here I have a word that is not the subject of a sentence, and because it is not the subject of a sentence, we know we have an introductory phrase. Notice that it is, in fact, a clause. It does not have its own verb. Even though it has a verb here, because it becomes a clause. Here's our actual sentence. We have no noodles. Notice how I can take this clause and put it at the end of noodles and we still make sense. We have no noodles because Raoul ate all the leftover bread. We have taken this clause, which really goes after noodles, and put it at the front with the because. And because we've done that, we need a comma to separate. What else could I put there other than a semicolon? Subject, verb, subject, verb. That's right, period, comma and, comma so, comma but, all kinds of nice stuff. What could I not put there? That's right, comma. And here's how a modifier works. Hermia, who we all love, modifying Hermia, is made of golden flowers. The sentence is actually, Hermia is made of gold flowers. But I wanted to modify for my readers who Hermia was, so I separate the phrase with commas. Woo! But we got a little bit of problem with the word and. And is a combiner. It allows for conjunction, but it is also a way to string two independents together, but they are different. Every time you run into the word and, look left, look right. Is it an independent to the left? Oh, it is. Subject, verb. Is it an independent to the right? No, it's Talib. Oh, well, in that case, these in the green parentheses are combined. And who does Talia admire? Rico. Who does Talia admire? Talib. No comma. A comma and only between independents. Talia admires Rico. And, oh, subject. She admires Talib. So I have an independent and an independent. Consequently, I need a comma and. Could not use just a comma. Notice that the comma and, I could substitute with a semicolon. I could substitute a period, an exclamation point, comma so, comma but. You have to have punctuation. Punctuation are the street signs. If we suddenly removed all the street signs, we'd have chaos on the streets. You wouldn't know when to stop. You wouldn't know when to yield. You wouldn't know when to merge. You wouldn't know when you can go through a California slow roll up to the stoplight. Just kidding, don't ever do that, it's dangerous. Let's take some examples of what, or rather how, punctuation allows us to make sense. Famous one, let us eat grandpa. What? If I don't put the comma here, let us eat, comma, grandpa, the modifier of what and who is going to eat, then it doesn't make quite the sense we mean. Unless we're cannibals, in which case it's time to eat grandpa. Here's another famous one. We should go clubbing baby seals. What? No, don't go to almost said California. Don't go to Canada and club baby seals. Club them right here at home. But if I put a comma here, we should go clubbing baby seals, it means you're going to take a bunch of white furry black-nosed seals out dancing at your favorite club. Here's a trickier one. I have $1 million for Raul, Julia, and Stefan. If I have $1 million and I'm separating it between Raul, Julia, and Stefan, then Raul is fortunate to get $500,000, Julia gets $250,000, and Stefan gets $250,000. Why? Because I have, subject verb, $1 million to be distributed to Raul, comma separates him, and then the and combines them. Whoa, wait a minute. If I put a comma in there, they each get $333,333, or however the money works out. Here's an even trickier one. I'd like you to meet my parents, Enrique, Stalin, and a polar bear. What? Because of where the comma is, it sounds like Enrique is who you is, and I'm going to introduce Enrique to my parents, who are Stalin and a polar bear. Whoa, that's a misplaced comma, isn't it? To get everyone $333,000, I have to use that comma. But look at just two quick shifts I can make in the Enrique sentence. I'd like you to meet my parents, Enrique, Stalin, and a polar bear. If I put the comma in here, then I'm going to meet 4 different people. We don't know who you is, but we're going to have you meet my parents, Enrique, Stalin, and a polar bear, which is a little different than having a polar bear and Stalin be my parents. Whoo! Here's what we have to keep in mind. First, periods are the strongest punctuation. They separate 2 independents. I encourage you to put periods in first. When you think it's time for a comma, put a period in. Then look left, look right. Does it make sense? Do I have 2 independents? If it doesn't, then maybe you could use a comma. Commas cannot separate independents. Independents have subject and verbs, and they require a period, a semicolon, a comma and, a comma but, an exclamation point, a dash, a stronger piece of punctuation than just a comma. What's most important to me is that you are consistent and you are applying the rules in a way that makes sense to you and that makes sense in your writing. The more consistent you are, the more likely you are to persuade me or any of your readers that you're ready to rock and roll with your punctuation. Whew, that wore me out. I don't know about you. It seems like it's time for a nap. Let's try to fix these sentences first. Now what I'd like you to do is to pause. I'm going to keep going, but I want you to pause and try to fix each of these sentences. I put in the terminal period at the end, but maybe I've left out punctuation, maybe I haven't. So go ahead and hit pause on your computer and on a separate piece of paper. Make sure you can punctuate each of these sentences and understand why you are punctuating each of these sentences. Welcome back. Here are the answers to the quiz. The mean man modifies Wixler. So we have to put the comma here and the comma here as if to say, I can throw this away. The commas have separated them from the rest of the sentence, the subject and the verb. Despite is not the subject of a sentence. It sublimates, puts underneath this phrase, Marguerite passed on the boiled snake despite her hunger. If I can move that clause, after the main sentence, the main phrase, then I know that I have an introductory clause and I need to separate with a comma. Kenny, Clarice, and Moost, all three of them kicked the can, and I need both those commas to prove. There's another introductory phase. That and is so tricky. But 20 people controls unique plants and berries. This is a combined group. This is a coordinated group. Unique plants and berries. I bet you got 100%. Congratulations. Now it's time for us to rest, find a comfortable spot to sit down, and get to work on our writing. I'm excited to see what you have to share for me next time. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always email me a sentence and I'd be happy to respond to you quickly. Bye now.